I'll start it, so I should be up on. All right. Okay, we are now. Oops, let me start recording. Just a second. Okay, good morning once again. Thank you for joining us for the second day number 2 of the ganjaactivists.com Cannabis Conference and Expo Series. This morning we have a very interesting roundtable conversation about bringing the small farmer into. And Marcus, you want to introduce yourself? Say something.
And well, morning everyone. I'm Marcus Ramkisoon. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a consultant mainly into cannabis. I've written the proposed laws, the proposed law and regulations, primary and subsidiary legislation regarding cannabis for a number of Caribbean countries. My proposed regulations have also been used as the base of the build-up of regulations for a number of other countries. And these days I'm into looking at the core industry, but I do consult for private and governmental organizations. I am one of the more educated persons within the industry. I currently hold 76 certifications in cannabis, 60 of which are accredited. And I have about 7 weeks again to finish my master's degree in cannabis science and campus. So I'm on my way to that level of academia, if you want to call it that. Hopefully I'll be able to pull a PhD soon out of it.
Okay, right. I thought you did have one as well. I saw a reference to you as Dr. Marcus Ramkisoon.
No, that's the thing. We have a certain lovely minister in my country that loves to call me Dr. Marcus and Dr. Ramkisoon, and I had to go on public television and correct that because, of course, I'm not trying.
I might have written that somewhere. I will make that adjustment quickly if that being the case, because I didn't know, and I was like, well, really? I was like, okay, well, I got to come correct.
I'm not one trying.
I know you're academics. You're very, very sensitive about your titles and your accomplishments and so on and so forth. I don't want to overstate or understate.
Especially myself coming from that academic background. It's not right or fair or reasonable to assign me a title that I haven't achieved yet. So I'm very cautious and wary about those things usually. Yes.
I got you. No problem. Well, let me. You mentioned that you've written a lot of the legislation, or at least it's helped write a lot of the legislation throughout the Caribbean. And what the conversation is supposed to be about, including the small farmer. Tell me well, and I guess we'll talk. Well, it hasn't really opened up throughout the Caribbean. So let's talk about Jamaica only right now. What is it in the Jamaican regulation, or where did did they potentially go wrong? Where there's no inclusion of the small farmer. The Rastafarians are only given sacramental rights. They cannot do trade commerce. They can't make money off of it. Where in the legislation, where did things go wrong, do you think, or where do things need to be amended so that at least we're not continuously having this conversation?
Matthew or myself?
Sorry, yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, that was better you address.
Yeah. So okay, it's a big topic because you're looking at cannabis being still an internationally controlled substance, an internationally controlled narcotic for that matter. All our laws within the Caribbean, within other continental countries, and so within the developed world, if you want to call it this, have to be guided, or our drug laws are guided by the international drug treaties of which we are signatory to. Within those international drug treaties, there are very, very specific guidelines as to how a country must deal with cannabis. This is why we see every country setting up a government authority, licensing authority, or so it's a government agency. All of these things are part and parcel of the regulatory guidelines. Any country wishing to engage in legislating an industry for the production of a controlled narcotic, just like within the opiate industry. So Jamaica is a very unique case. Now you have to understand Jamaica is one of the most colorful histories in the world, probably, when it comes to cannabis. Starting in the early 1900s, brought over. You have to understand, cannabis was there from at least since the Spanish settlers and colonizers came in. They would have.
I firmly believe they would have come and met cannabis. I'm pretty
sure.
No.
They would not have come and met.
You don't think so?
It's incorrect. Don't spread.
Why would the indigenous, the Tainos and so on?
Because cannabis is not endemic to this region of the world.
What about North America? They used to travel. I mean,
cannabis first reached North America with the English settlers. I believe the British colony of Massachusetts was the first colony set up within the US there that was an official colony. Hemp cannabis or hemp strains of cannabis would have come in with all colonizers because it was the main It was mainly used for ropes and sails for the ships that they used.
Right.
Other things. But cannabis is not endemic to this side of the world. So
at all.
No, at all.
South
So,
America, North America.
Prior to the 1300s, 1400s or so, there's no cannabis on South America or North America on those continents. That's not correct. Okay?
Yeah. All right, fair enough.
Right? When it was brought here, it started off with hemp strains, recreational or
Sacramental.
intoxicating use of cannabis for recreation started when the Indian indentured laborers came over to the Caribbean. That's when they brought, cannabis smoking and bang and the use of this and the use of whatnot, right?
Okay, we have no history of it on we have no recorded history of it on the African continent, but of course it was there as well.
Right. No, well, it would have spread again through colonization and so on. And then you have to remember the African continent is connected by land bridge to the Asian continent.
Right, exactly.
It could have existed in Africa way longer than it have existed in our side of the world because you have to travel for months.
It take that much longer, right? Exactly.
Right, to get there. And again, it wasn't endemic on this side. No one asked the question why the Rastafari faith uses cannabis as a sacrament. Yes, we know why we don't cut the hair and the beards and all that stuff within the Nazarene vows of the Bible. We understand that through Genesis and through Satan saying, God gave every tree bearing a seed and all that. But has anyone really asked the question when the Rastafari faith started in Jamaica in the 1930s, right? Why they included or incorporated cannabis as a religious sacrament? If you look back at the history, you will realize that from the 1910s, when a lot more East Indians started coming in, right? And remember, Jamaica and Trinidad is different because we had East Indian indentured laborers from the
absolutely. That was
right.
When these
guys, these cultures started coming in and bringing narcotic cannabis with them and bringing the celebratory and religious use of cannabis, the sadhus and the Shiva followers through him. That's where the real religious aspect of cannabis use came in on this side of the world. There is not a lot of documented history in the literature for sure. But when you do some research and look at it from the historical perspectives, this is what you gather. You gather that it was a mix of cultures coming in to form this, right? So that's one aspect of looking at it. Now, because of this, we had the Rastafari faith. We've had birthed some the best or the most famous musician on the planet, Bob Marley, right? And his music itself, right, along with all the other reggae artists in Jamaica, which Jamaica also birthed reggae, has carried the ideals of Rastafarianism, the ideals of the culture of Jamaica, and indeed the ideals of cannabis use throughout the world, right? That music has spread.
This is true.
Those ideals so far is more than impressive. So we're looking at a country that has had this cultural impact on cannabis.
See, that is the whole point. I mean, I understand the whole that you and Dr. You and Trudy speak to the government, and they will say the same thing. You speak to people within the industry. They're like, the UN thing, that's bullshit. No one cares about that. Come on, that's nonsense. We can look at Canada, look at this and that, and so on and so forth. It's really just America. So what about a country like Canada, who's been like, look, we're gonna ban the laws, or is it Uruguay? Sorry. We're gonna. I mean, again, listen. The UN has given guidelines, but they're not telling you how to implement. If they're telling how to implement it, that would be there. Then that would be across the board. There wouldn't be this. Every government has their own regulatory body.
No. I'll tell you what happened there, right, Omari. The issue is, and one of the reasons I have my job with governments is because the legal advisors to governments, I won't say which position, you all can guess, seem not to know the country's obligations under the international drug treaties. Now, I don't expect a person in a position of authority to know everything about their job all the time. But I mean, come on, these ministers have teams of people under them. They should know these things. One of the reasons I got my job in some of the countries I got my job to write the laws was because I was able to show what the obligations of the country are to the international drug treaties.
Right.
We would lose this, and if we went that, we would lose this. Now look at Jamaica. Jamaica had quite a wrongs. You have to remember they had two political parties during the event of cannabis movement. The first political party engaged in the decriminalization of the Medicinal Act in 2015. You have to remember also that Jamaica wanted to legalize cannabis as early as 1977. And from 1977 went forward with Siobhan's report and all that stuff.
Yeah, but that's I mean that sentiment itself has even died down. I mean, let's face it, it was social pressure and the one minister that really pushed, we have to do this, we have to at least decriminalize, stop imprisoning our people, stop criminalizing our Rastafarians, and allow for medical cannabis because it's going to be big business.
I'm actually doing a paper right now, a report for a university on the section known as the rationale behind some of the Caribbean islands move towards medical cannabis. And, you know, as much as the activism and the voices of advocacy has been a great part of it, realistically, like Jamaica, even when Jamaica announced in 2013 that they were ready again to look at these things, and they had a huge number of foreign investors come in, land, right?
Oh, this is true, and make the recommendations and put the proposal on.
And then we've even seen that when that party lost the election and the new party came in, what happened was a complete revamping of the cannabis industry in Jamaica, where everybody who had applied before had to reapply for their licenses. Why? Because I was there, so I can tell you, certain persons had their hands in everybody's business in the politics. And their government coming in and said, no, that can't happen. And they scrapped the whole system and started it over.
That's it, okay.
And they still
give me one second. Let me, Matthew, let me bring you into this conversation. How did things look from that international? No, keep your camera on. It's okay, anyways. From the international perspective of the view of Jamaica, with the whole, I guess, the transition to decriminalization, and I guess this kind of state where we are, where a lot of people say, look, let's just try to go full decriminalization or full legalization and open up the industry. People are suffering. Open up the economy. What's the point of view out from it, as for, you know, Jamaican living outside? What are you guys seeing, looking at?
We think that the model is a little bit dated. With the vertical integration of like being able to have farm, processor, and the retail all under the same roof or same ownership. It's not something that you're seeing anymore because you can have a pretty much a monopoly on that. So we're seeing the system is a bit dated, but it's also amazingly affordable to get into because of where it is. So those are the two biggest draws and two biggest critiques of the system itself so far. But at the same time, too, I'm on the outside looking in. I will say this, that dealing with the CLA so far has been super easy. They've been, they've been very receptive to applications, to queries, and extremely punctual in answering questions about anything that I've had to, that's brought to top as well. I will say this though, if I had one thing to say, we could use the government's help in creating a market for the small farmer.
Okay.
Right.
How do you think that would, how would that happen?
Normalizing relations with the EU so that we could have standards and quality standards and quality assurance programs that are normalized and easy to take advantage of. Have an inspection board and a certification board in Jamaica that when I say to them, hey, listen, my product tested 15% THC with zero heavy metals, that is fact. Not when I send it to the airport in Israel and it gets retested and there's a big discrepancy.
Right.
Stuff like that, I think they could help with. Asking the current dispensaries to say, or actually not even asking, kind of insisting that, listen, you can't just sell your own product. You have to buy a certain percentage from the small farmer or from a farmer who has less than you.
Right. But then, well, okay. No, go ahead. Right. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think maybe kind of establishing a floor price as well. Okay. Right. But yeah, like establishing a floor price, like this is what the basis of a pound of weed costs.
Right.
But that's kind of hard to do because it's market manipulation as well. So
but then see, I was gonna ask Marcus to jump back in and say, is that within the realm of legality that a government could even get that level of involved within the industry, given the current, I guess, drug treaty? I mean,
yes and no. It's a tough one. Matthew has some great suggestions. Yes, that would be fabulous if we on this side of the world could have a a reconcilable or very similar standardization process as it is in Europe. Because what he means by that is that when you're manufacturing consumable goods to enter the European market, any consumable good, you have to meet Euro GMP standards, European manufacturing practices. And those standards are usually much higher than American
in the US, right, yeah.
GMP. So even if your facility is approved for GMP in Jamaica by Caribbean GMP standards, your product can't enter Europe. It's one, right? If you seek Euro GMP, your facility has to be, real tops because it's real tight, right? And you apply, it costs you 35,000 euro. It takes you 6 months to get 2 inspectors from Europe to come in here to your local country to inspect you. If you have one thing wrong, you fail. You have to wait for process again, and you have to wait for process again. Entire compliance companies in Europe, dozens, tens, maybe even hundreds, have developed on the job description of teaching companies how to be compliant.
Yeah, I've seen this. Yes.
GMP stuff, right? That's one. Second part is that let's look at Africa for a second, because I'm not 100% sure on the financial situation with Jamaica in terms of IMF and FATF standards, right? Right now. So I don't know where Jamaica is, right? I know Trinidad was gray listed up to recently, and our AG said we're not gray listed anymore. I don't know if we're off the gray list.
It was just said, it was stated. He made the statement was made, all right?
But look at Africa. There are some countries in Africa that cannot, even if they were to get their Euro GMP approval on the facilities there, right? They cannot export goods to Europe because they're not in good standing with international monetary guidelines.
Are you serious?
Yes. So this is the thing. They can't listen. They can do all they want, right? And this has been a problem for food stuff coming from Africa too, right? Even if you meet the standards, certain countries, because they have not been, because of corrupted governance, because of monies, because of the governments, right? They are banned from sending goods to Europe, right? So whether Jamaica is in that standing or not, I don't know, right?
No, we're good. We can send, we can export, but again, stuff needs to meet EU GMP standards for it to actually be considered.
Well, I'll have to correct you on that. There's because Jamaica allowed religious or sacramental use and manufacture, Jamaica, just like Canada, who is allowed recreational use, they are in non-compliance with the international drug treaties, and the International Narcotics Control Board, which is the body responsible for enforcing those treaties, has issued a first warning of non-compliance to both those countries, right?
Right.
No commercial cannabis export in Canada has ever been completed under their cannabis legislation. It is done under narcotics handling licenses and narcotics manufacturing licenses. It was a big secret on this side of the world, but when you go to Europe, and everybody knows that's how you get it.
Right.
As long as you're breaking with the international treaties, you cannot export cannabis commercially under your cannabis laws, because it explicitly states within the treaties that both parties import
would then be
must be in full compliance of there. This is why Jamaica came out with a brand new set of export laws recently. Very, very good. But it makes no difference because they're still in non-compliance with the treaties. How exporting from Jamaica, you are taking advantage of the always existing, meaning 20, 30, 40 years ago, research export status for narcotics and drugs, which usually when people export or import narcotics under this license, it's for testing, training police dogs, training police officers, education purposes. So you see like a gram of weed, a gram of cocaine, a gram of heroin coming in under those licenses. Jamaica has been pushing the boundaries of the research exports by
kilograms or something,
using the maximum allowed amount of 10, right? And sending out research exports of 10 kilograms, no more, right? To whatever they've been sending to. So it's but that makes no sense either, because I can tell you that in the business of cannabis, when you're importing and exporting cannabis commercially, it's tonnage, tons.
Yeah, absolutely.
10 kilogram shipments we can send.
No, well, this. I mean, people have laughed at that. I mean, obviously, they're making headway and they're doing what they need to do to try to get into the market. But this is it. Look, Matthew just said that.
Matthew just Sorry. Matthew just said that he's very interested in export. I heard him say that from the beginning, right?
But that's what everybody wants.
Very, very careful as to how much money you spend into this industry looking towards export, right? When the country itself cannot do anything more than a research export. Eventually, you will have to seek to either partner with existing narcotics handling licensees. Now, these are some of the largest distributors.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
we have opiates coming into our pharmaceuticals and our pharmacies. Those are the ones, they have narcotics handling licenses already.
So,
But you have to,
so question for you: how did Israel import? What is it? 75 tons last year.
say it again. How did
Israel import 75 tons? How did Germany?
From where?
Various countries all over the world.
Right. When they
Africa,
outside of Europe and the couple countries.
No, but these are countries that are members of the European Union, right? Like, how does Germany now import cannabis from Holland?
Right.
How does Italy import?
Yes.
And it's in tonnage. There was just a deal signed.
Because those countries are in compliance with the treaties. They don't have religious or sacramental use. They don't have recreational.
Right. I think Greece does have recreational. Denmark definitely. No, I'm sorry, not Denmark, but Holland definitely does have recreational.
Holland does not have anything recreational on its law books.
It's
Law. There's no legislation.
It's decriminalized. It's been decriminalized.
It's not decriminalized. It's tolerated. There's a difference with Holland. Right? Holland never put these things on there.
And the same thing out of Canada as well. Like, I know that they've actually exported tons upon tons of weed
under narcotics handling licenses, not under their cannabis laws and the health.
Right, but if you're doing, what you're saying is that you can only export 10 kilos at a time under narcotics handling.
No. Sorry, you mistook me. You can only export 10 kilos at a time under research exports, which is what Jamaica does now. Right? If 20 years ago, if I wanted to engage in a research export, it could be done, but it wouldn't be what it is. So, but no, you can export in tonnage with the narcotics handling licenses, but those things don't fall under the purview of cannabis law in like Canada. It's not under Health Canada's cannabis law. It's under Health Canada's pharmaceutical manufacturing and pharmaceutical handling laws.
Yes. Absolutely. So I guess what I'm saying is that you can do it. You just have to know what it is that you're doing.
Yes, and you have to be able to work with the systems. So it's not impossible. It's not really hard.
Okay. Excellent.
I know that people are spending more than 10 kilogram packages, but at the same time too, it's usually how it actually works. I have a contact in Israel, and they do, like, when they buy a purchase order for the year for a certain amount of tons, of which they want product delivered against on a monthly basis.
Correct. Yep.
Sometimes weekly basis. So in all essence, 10 kilograms is what, 22 pounds. Multiply that by 12, that's a decent amount of cannabis leaving for the year.
Right.
Even in that little small amount.
And you know as well as I, that's too little to make any real money. You sell that domestically in less than a week in a coffee shop, in a dispensary, herb house, whatever you want to call it. Right.
All right. Well, let me bring this back again because the issue is including the small farmers. So how do given the limitations, even in exportation and even the market that could be accomplished at this time, how do we build out? Effectively, we have to build an industry within our own countries. So how do we bring that? How can we, what's necessary to bring the small farmer into at least this space, into developing our own little markets here? I mean, what about through the Caribbean? Do CARICOM, can we not? I mean, we could establish a nice little industry.
CARICOM could do what it wants, and each country can do what it wants on its own. And yes, sure, even some countries are looking at those loopholes. Look at Antigua. Antigua has realized that it has allowed recreational use and knows it's not going to be able to export under its cannabis laws. They already made plans to send any exportable material to St. Vincent, because St. Vincent did not. They actually went to the INCB when they had their 3 pieces of legislation and said, can we do this? And the INCB said, listen, medical cannabis industry, fine. Traditional farmers, fine. But sacramental use, we will have to issue the first warning. You won't be able to export under the cannabis license. And Vinci said, wow, no. Our goal is to export cannabis. So they scrapped their sacramental use bill, right? And went ahead with the other 2 bills. This is from the words of Minister Sabuto, right? This is what St. Vincent did. And because of that, St. Vincent will be possibly the only country in the Caribbean allowed to export under their cannabis laws without having to seek another license under a different set of laws, which is the narcotics manufacturer.
Narcotics, right? But then that goes right back to the writing of the legislation.
I have a quick
Should it have been
question on
written in
that,
such a way to exclude the Rastafarians from the commercial trade of cannabis? Then?
Matthew, was you going to say something?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, he was asking. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I had a quick question on that, right? Because like a lot of the countries that we're sending into, right, they allow for sacrilegious use, they allow for recreational use.
Sacramental.
So, sacramental. Use,
Actually, it's only the Caribbean allows a Sacramental. Everywhere else is recreational or non-medical.
Recreational, right? So even if we're going to export to those countries, we still have to get the special permit anyway.
Right.
Yes, those countries that have recreational, like Canada, their importers even cannot import under the cannabis licenses. They also have to get narcotics handling licenses to import, because both parties, when it comes to import-export, has to be in full compliance with the international drug treaties. Now, we've seen a proposed change to those international treaties at the end of 2020. That was a 3-year ongoing process. WHO made 6 recommendations to the United Nations CND, Commission on Narcotic Drugs, to make changes to the thing, which would have effectively legislated hemp, because it's not on the treaties, right? Hemp is not defined. Hemp is cannabis. There's no 2 ways about it, right? And would have set about some other things to make things a little bit easier. And in actuality, all they did is correct a mistake that happened in the 1961 treaty.
So about the extract or something.
Yeah, they scheduled cannabis under Schedule 1 and Schedule 4. So they're like, oh, we repeated it. Let's take it out. It makes no real difference what they did in CND. And that was the first recommendation to change in the treaties in over years. So I really don't expect to see a change in the international treaties for the next 10 to 15 years. So we have to also be aware of, you have to also be able to forecast this market and be able to know what is coming and what's happening. Now, you asked correctly, all those countries that are importing tonnage, Israel now is huge. Israel, Germany, all these countries are also looking at establishing their own local markets, right? Look at Germany. Germany was the biggest exporter before Israel started their import-exports, right? And Germany was importing, I think, 8 tons a year. And they asked their farmers, their local interested farmers, listen, how much can you produce per year? And they said, well, we could produce 2 tons to 3 tons per year. And they said, okay, well, 8 tons this year. Next year, we'll probably do about 12 tons. We're given licenses for 6 people to grow now, right? And there are growers in Germany now, and they are looking at supplying the market. Now, of course, if we on this side of the world could produce a product of better quality and lower price, then of course we have something that is sellable, right? But when it comes to the actual legislation of getting it out, how are we going to get it done if the legislation is not in the correct place? Now, I'm gonna bring it back a little bit to what the topic of the conversation is and what Omari asked us, which is how then, if all these things are involved, how can we involve small farmers into the industry? I want to make 2 points. Trinidad and Tobago actually just had their proposed primary legislation come out of the Joint Select Committee. And there's something on it that amazes me, because no other country has done it so far, even Jamaica, which is religious import and exports of cannabis. Okay. Went through the whole, tralala of why you can't export or import medicinal cannabis if you allow recreational and so. These people went and said, you're going to allow religious imports and exports of cannabis. But I waited, because there's no country in the world that does it, that allows it, and can allow it. So our legislators actually didn't put something unreasonable in our books. They went ahead and put something that is nonsense.
Right,
and
it's not there.
Population a hope now that, oh, well, look, we get into do religious export, then you're going to have to repeal it before the bill passes, because it is nonsense. It's never going to work. So that there's a lot of things happening. So in other words, the industry itself is becoming domestic. This is why I said just now, Germany is producing on its own. We know Israel is producing on its own. I visited in 2019. I can tell you they're producing. And Israel is looking at, just like every other country in the world, maybe with the exception of Germany and Italy right now, is looking at exports, not imports, right? And with that, you're seeing that every market is trying to fulfill its own demand for cannabis and for medicinal cannabis.
Absolutely.
In my opinion then, and my advice to most companies that I consult for, is that the first mode of operation when you're looking at core cannabis licenses in any jurisdiction is to look at developing your domestic industry, right?
Absolutely.
domestic customers are and how it is. Now, Jamaica is difficult. Have you all been there? Have you seen? Have you seen the herb houses that have opened with all its excitement that we're going to make millions of dollars, right? And I walk into a couple of them and there's no one. There's a couple.
I mean, well, again, let's not forget. They all when there's this COVID thing going on, but I mean, all the companies that have been set up with the intention to export. Yes, they would establish their brand, but the whole thing is to export. What they're going to export, whether it's a byproduct, whether it's a commodity type, whether they're going to grow hemp, whether it's that remains in individual companies and so on. But that's always been the intention, is to export. I agree with you completely. We do need to develop our local market and focus on that and develop our product for the local market to really test them out on the local market. Don't just try to produce, create another wedding cake because that's popular in Canada. It's probably not going to grow the same way.
Look, Jamaica has the best opportunity in the Caribbean to create an exportable product because Jamaica is the country in the Caribbean that has a name,
a brand,
and a brand. It is a brand. Jamaica itself is
a brand,
and is part of this cannabis industry.
Well, that's why there's a desire to export. You want to export the brand. I just said Bob Marley. He started right here in Jamaica, but it's one of the biggest artists in the world globally. And that's what Jamaicans want. How can we achieve that?
I agree with that in terms of the branding opportunity, but the truth of the matter is the purchase orders that we have from foreign companies, it's white labeling. Like the end user is not going to have any idea where that weed came from.
Okay, right. That brings up another question. There's one of our sponsors, Juicy Fields. They have an interesting little platform, and I see they're in South Africa, Colombia, a couple other countries, and it's a crowd growing platform. They will speak to that at some point in time. They're doing something in Mexico right now. Effectively. Somebody would make the investment and purchase a set of plants. Then the farmer would then get the seeds and the money to grow the plants, and then whatever product is produced, that's now exported to the buyer, and that's processed into oils and tinctures and all that kind of good stuff. How would a situation like that work out to Jamaica if they're doing this in South Africa and Colombia already? And that to me would help include a lot of smaller farmers. How can that be implemented in Jamaica?
They bring up a good point there. They're doing it in South Africa and Colombia. Who outside of branding, outside of specialty branding, we are Jamaica. This is Jamaican product. And just as Matthew said, a lot of the orders are coming in as white label, right? Meaning for those who
don't. Well, this is what I'm saying. So that becomes even more interesting. So how do we even? What if we have this happening and people are jumping on it and making money, which is fine. At the end of the day, everybody just wants to make money. The small farmers just want to make money. They don't care about selling Jamaica. They just want to make money. If you're a company, you want to sell your brand. And those are two completely different things. But again, how are they doing it elsewhere, establishing this elsewhere? How can we establish this something like this in the Caribbean?
For small farmers, right? That's your question. How are they doing it? It's strictly through social equity programs. Let me bring a point to you. If you allowed everybody to grow and sell cannabis, home cultivation, whatever, they could sell it. They bring a good quality, they could take it to the shop, they could sell it, they could make some money.
Which is what people want,
What do you think is going to happen to the market?
Right. I know.
You get saturated.
Right. And we have examples. We've seen Oregon. Oregon has allowed in its initial stages endless growers and sellers. And what happened? Right. The price of cannabis fell to less than the price of vegetables. Right?
Okay.
Look at hemp. In 2010, isolated CBD from hemp was 120,000 euro per kilo. Over the years, that consistently dropped. And up to a few years ago, prior to 2019, which is when the first cultivation of hemp began legally in the US under the 2018 Farm Bill, isolated CBD was still 7,500 euro per kilogram and is still 45 to 7,500 euro per kilogram in Europe and even in Canada. You know what it's at in the US right now? $750 per kilogram of isolated CBD. What do you think is going to happen when Colombia starts and certain
Oh, and
countries.
when Africa starts getting, I'm fully. This is why I would like. In my mind, Jamaica needs to get out ahead and just needs to run with the brand and get some craft products and brands out there.
So
if you
right,
want to
but
try to compete with people who've got acreage of land bigger than Jamaica, that they can say, "I'm going to grow ganja on that." It's like I don't know, you know.
well, there's a number of inherent problems with the plans of Jamaicans in terms of production. And when I was there, most people in Jamaica is not like Trinidad and the other small islands. A lot of people there say, I have a little piece of land. Oh, you have a little piece of land? How much land? 500 acres. What? Right? Jamaica big, you know, get tired. Right? So, and a lot of these guys thinking we're going to plant 10, 20, 50, and 100 acres of cannabis. Who is going to buy it? I had meetings with a number of ganja farmers groups in Jamaica when I was there in 2015, and everybody pointed to me. Are you going to buy it? What? What do you mean? Right? So who's going to buy it? Right? Who's going to buy your outdoor produced cannabis, which is more than likely not going to meet
GMP
standards that Matthew talked about earlier? Because outdoor grown cannabis is not cucumbers we growing and sweet peppers. This is a sticky inflorescence,
right? Yeah.
Upon itself, meaning it starts like this and it gets thicker. So when it's thick, right, and a fly or insect gets stuck in it and dies, and then
it consumes it. Yeah.
It builds flowers around it, right?
Yeah.
You think in that sample bud for testing, they're going to say, oh, let's throw away this and take our next sample. But no, you're going to have to destroy entire crop.
Right.
Standards that Matthew is asking for. So you could put more farmers in trouble, right? By actually setting them up to fail, right? Not advising them properly. And this is one of the issues I've had with Jamaica's cheap licenses, in my opinion, like Colombia, whereas in Antigua and all that, we've recommended high license prices, not to exclude people, right? But so
that's the immediate reaction.
Well, what's it now in Jamaica? Like 3,000 US for a license?
They've halved it, and you can pay it over time and something like that. I don't know.
Sorry, Matthew.
Not even 3,000 US dollars. It's $2,750 all told if you are awarded a license.
That's it.
So for a wealthy man could walk in the application office with his application and pull out his 3,000 US from his back pocket and say, here. Right?
Well, yeah. Well, no. There are. I will say this. As the CLA has them because they have heard the calls of exactly that. $3,000. You know, to some people it's like whatever. You're growing ganja, you're gonna make that back in a month. But no, they have. I believe that they're giving some concessions for if you're a small farmer. They've have that, and you could pay it over a period of time, so over like a year or something.
But you don't pay that until you actually are licensed. It's a
provisional thing. I'm not certain how that works. I don't think.
But what I'm saying is,
but then again, there's that as well. Yeah.
What my point is in regards to the price is that for a wealthy person, this might be a little bit of money, but for a lot of poor people in Jamaica, and I know personally, 3,000 US is a lot of
money.
Is some people's half of their life savings. People don't understand it, so I'll explain it. People who working in these fancy resorts and stuff in Jamaica, they only get paid between 200 to 400 US dollars a month. You know, that is their right, and that's a lot for them. Right?
No, that's not a lot for them. Please do not make that assumption. Do not make that.
All right. Sorry, maybe it's not, but that's what the salary is. So there is a lot of persons in lower economic standing in Jamaica, and to have these persons now say, gonna make some money. Let me take my savings and invest it in a license, and they get through that process, and then they realize, wait, who's going to buy my product? Who? Yeah. Who am I selling the product to? Wait, I can't.
That's the problem. I don't think a lot of them haven't thought that far ahead, and that is a part of the problem. But let's get why would you want to increase the prices? Why would that?
Right.
Why would that
so increasing the price allows.
Let me one sec, Marcus. There's also, in addition to that, 250, right? Like you now have to set up your 1 acre facility.
I was just good. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you.
Which is also
that's
another
where the cost really comes in. That's right.
Right. But at the same time, too, cannabis is one of the most expensive crops in the world. Right. It needs to be farmed to a certain standard because if you're growing outdoor, you can't really control it. Right. So now you got to put in greenhouses, whether they be hoop houses or whatever it is, which is usually not a technique that people are farming with in Jamaica, and it is an additional expense, right? So what the CLA has done is they've made it accessible, but it's still inaccessible to be done.
I got you. I brought that argument to people because people have come and said, "Oh, the government, this government." That. I say, well, it's not necessarily. It's not the licensing. They're really trying to work with people with the licensing, but the build out, the security, all the necessary things.
That's why we set a high license cost
standards, right? So that they can afford that. But then that's just going to make more people pissed off.
No, because we don't want people.
Can't even try.
We don't want people to do like Jamaica and spend the 3,000 US, which might be a lot for them, and then realize, oopsie, we had to spend 20.
Yeah, they must know that already. And you strip
then
you did that. Then you did. You're investing in something. You did not do your own due diligence.
But this has been the problem in Jamaica. When you see the articles in the newspapers where Jamaican farmers crying, right? They can't do nothing with their licenses and all these things, which I've read. It's because of that. It's because and then this is the problem. How can you expect a small farmer today to become a businessman tomorrow? Because this is what the industry is. The industry involves administration and involves business.
Absolutely, acumen. Absolutely.
So you can't expect a small farmer to just know. So this is where the CLA is supposed to come in. The CLA is supposed to advise the farmers as to what direction they should go. Now, this is the main point and the crux of the whole matter here when you ask about small farmers. I raised the point just now that if you let everybody grow cannabis, demand will exceed supply, price will drop, nobody will get rich. We've heard the activists over the years in the Caribbean call for let everybody grow and let's still have dollars on it. The two is not exclusive, right? They're mutually exclusive. They don't work hand in hand. Right? You can't make millions of dollars if everybody has it, right? It has to be a controlled industry. So how do you get small farmers? You're only going to issue X amount of licenses. Every jurisdiction has issued licenses, has reached the point where they've said, we've reached a stage in applications. We have a little too much now. We have to hold the application process. All that happens all the time, right? So what do you do for small farmers? What the government is supposed to do in the creating and the crafting of their legislation is look at what we term in the industry social equity programs. Right? Social equity programs would then be, and my personal suggestion to the governments I've worked with so far in the Caribbean has been this. It has been to cordon off or card off a set of the license, a percentage. So you know you're going to issue X amount. You mightn't know from the beginning how many licenses, but state within the law that 20%, 30%, St. Kitts said they would do 50, 60%, right, of the licenses that you're going to be issued should be blocked off and carded off for the social equity program. The social equity program should encourage small farmers to come together. If they can't do it themselves, come individually and the CLA will put them together according to region and location and all these things, right? And bring 50 small farmers together in a group minimum, right? Help them set up a company because again, none of them might know how to even register a company. Right?
There will be people. I mean, all the ganja associations have their student members, chairman.
Yeah. But what happens with the ganja associations?
Well, that's just it. The farmers themselves, they don't want to. I mean, the government is pushing them to form cooperatives.
I'm very familiar with your ganja association.
Well, exactly. So how do you contend with that when the farmers themselves look? I want my own damn license, my own company.
So as opposed to one man in the ganja association say, I want 30%, and the rest of you all could split the rest 30%, right?
Which is kind of what will happen.
The law should be within the regulations that within the social equity program that we're looking to legislate should be that this group of 50 farmers will come together and become equal sharing partners. Right. That will be under mandate of the law. The CLA's responsibility would then be, long time, I don't know about Jamaica, but long time in Trinidad, after about 15 years ago, you go to the Internal Revenue Service and they will help you do your taxes for free. They stopped that some years ago and now more money privately. But this is something that you should, if you're really trying to help your industry grow within your country, then you should set somebody to sit down and CLA, a business person, to help these people become businessmen. Direct them, help them with a business plan. Look, part of the application is a business plan. You know how much it is?
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you go to a professional, it's ridiculous. The drawing, all that stuff could cost 15,000 US, could cost you for a floor plan drawing. If you go to the right? So you have to be able to help these people get where they need to get. But that is my proposed solution. It's been done to an extent and a lesser extent because the social equity programs in the US allow for single owners to get single licenses. But then what you're really doing, you're saying that we have 1,000 people that fit the needs of the social equity program and we're only going to issue 10 of them licenses. They can't get through. So this is why we look at possibly looking at getting groups of large numbers of persons who fit into this category, helping them come together as equal sharing partners, helping them become businessmen and guiding them into how to operate the business, and then helping those people achieve the economic standing that they need. And you're able to help as a government, you'll be able to help a lot more people in your country access the industry properly, get to where they need to get without setting them up for failure.
Yeah.
All right. We're kind of, well, we started a little bit late, so that's fine. But I want to bring Matthew on this. We spoke before, and you said that one of the things that you want to do is to help the small farmer. And you mentioned before that even with an aspect within the Jamaican legislation that you don't like is a vertical integration. And so what's your proposal? What's a better structure, do you think? A better system?
If you own a dispensary or a herb house, you cannot grow weed. You need to buy it. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So a non-vertical operation.
That's interesting.
If you have a dispensary in New York, you cannot grow weed. If you are a processor, you cannot grow or retail. If you have a farm, you cannot retail weed. What it does is ensures
it forces people to at least form partnerships, which is interesting.
You have to buy from a farmer. You have to buy from a processor. You cannot, and sure, you can have a store brand, but you're going to buy it from a farmer.
And white label, as you were saying, and white label it, as you were saying.
Here's the problem I have with that, Matthew. Since it's around, I guess let's discuss a little, right? I've actually in doing this master's degree, which is a really good degree actually. We've had courses surrounding just what you mentioned there, basically, and those topics came up as to whether vertical integration or no vertical integration is better, and they more focused in the US. It's a US school. Some states do mandated vertical, some states do mandated non-vertical, as you just suggested, and some states which, in the writing of my discussions and assignments, and so I had suggested that allowing for both vertical and non-vertical would be a better system. One of the few things I suggested is separating, like in Trinidad, the processing also includes a processing, extraction, and infused products. I would have liked to see, like California, infused products licenses separated from the process.
Different. Yes.
Because infused product represents multiple things. One person could do brownies, one person could do cookies, one person, as opposed to giving the extractor all. But so right, so that's good. But here's the thing now with the non-vertical approach or the mandated non-vertical approach. Let me use myself as an example. I am the franchisee and sole license holder in Trinidad and Barbados for one of the largest retail brands of cannabis in the world, right? And we set up our branded dispensaries with that brand. So it come like KFC, right? I compare it to KFC because most Caribbean people understand KFC, right? So as you well know, you could open your own fried chicken restaurant, which I did for a few years, right? And real good, real marketing, real advertising. You'll never sell the amount of KFC, right? They have patronage and their marketing has been from there, right? So branding in an industry is huge. So taking on a large international brand, retail brand, is actually going to make us more money than if we tried to do like some of the Jamaican setups, if you will, and try to get multiple locations and create our own, right? So yes, we have franchise fees to pay and license fees, but here's the thing. They're going to want, like KFC, a certain quality. They already have their recipes and their certain genetics and all that. And they're going to want quality.
And it has to be standardized across the board as well.
Yes. Now they will give allowances, just as Matthew suggested. Okay, well, if they give us the retail, they might give Matthew the cultivation.
Interesting, right?
And then make us work together to supply each other. And have that business.
That's what I'm saying. Of course, you'd also form partnerships.
Which can work. But for me as an investor and having to pay fees and all that into this brand, just as we told the company, we don't want that. We want to be able to control our cultivation also, because only will we be able to assure the level of quality of the
that will always be
and is known for is coming out. So in certain circumstances, if you want certain things to be developed properly and the industry to develop properly, vertical is a way to go. And I am very against monopolization, right? Listen, as a consultant in the Caribbean for governments, I have personally deterred monopolization in 3 Caribbean countries. I was asked in Trinidad and Tobago by a certain large multinational company to put 3 licenses vertical only for 3 months, right? And I would be one of the wealthiest Trinidadians in cannabis. And I said no before they could blink the eyes. They thought I was retired. Maybe I am, I don't know, but you can't buy me, right? You're not buying, this gentleman cannot be bought, right? So I understand the aspects of monopolization through vertical, but it doesn't always have to go that way. You know, it's something that we can look at from a different.
I think if someone is allowed a full vertical operation, then they should be severely limited on what their sales can be, because it's moving out, it's pushing other people out, right? If it's forcing you to work with a farmer and it's forcing that farmer to farm to the standards, that's what partnerships and give more people bites out of the apple. Will we all make a little bit less money? Absolutely, but we'll make enough that we'll do enough. There's enough to go around, as opposed to just like, oh no, all mine.
I agree with that. I think that's an interesting approach, Matthew. That would, it's even with the white labeling, because yes, as Mark was saying, you do want to control the quality. That's why vertical integration actually kind of works, because you can have that level of control. But I would suggest with the system that you're discussing, the dispensary or the consumer will also demand a certain quality product that then the dispensary owner is now saying, look, it has to be for this. And it can also work with the farmers to bring things up to that level of standards and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
and that helps.
I'll be honest with you. Yeah, and I think it gives you the opportunity now to develop a branded product, right? Like Flocana, they don't have dedicated dispensaries. They're in different dispensaries, but people come in and ask for it by name.
Right.
Wonder Bread is one. Cookies. Which just now stand alone, but if you go into certain dispensaries, people ask for it by name because they know this product is superior. It comes from a better farmer. Usually, you go into a full vertical dispensary, it's not even branded. It's just, this is what we have, and that's what you get.
Different percentages of THC, CBD, and so on. And
it's based on what it is that they're telling me. I don't really know if that's particularly true.
Agreed. Right on. Yeah. You don't necessarily have the general public's opinion with you and so on.
I mean, we only see vertical in the cannabis industry. It's in no other industry.
No, that's not correct. That's not correct. I have to correct it. It's in every other industry. Okay, that I was just about to make that point a couple minutes ago.
They buy their chicken, right? They buy their chicken from a chicken producer. They don't own the chicken farms.
Yeah, but you're looking at it in a different sense. You're saying no other industry. What about how do you think we go from small business to large business to corporate and corporations? Most of these countries, most of these large corporations,
they are vertically. That's they
buy into the
acquire company. They acquire companies.
And they start doing every part of the chain. They do the manufacturing, they do the sales, they do the everything. Right. So this is normal business. That's what I was about to say. It's not this industry. It's everywhere. Look at alcohol. You know. So
you see, but I think, there is a point. It's like those other industries didn't start vertical integration. That wasn't like the foundation of the industry. They didn't start there. You know, they developed through acquisitions and mergers and so on and so forth.
Right, and the same thing will happen here. But that's not true either. Because look at Fernandez in Trinidad. Fernandez didn't acquire, you know, right? So Fernandez started with manufacturing and distribution and sales, and they've only
alcohol. I guess you're distributor, but they don't own bars.
They don't own bars.
They don't own the retail. They're absolutely correct. In that regard, they are not.
They don't own the bars.
They do events, and they do host their retail events themselves.
Absolutely.
They carry out all the events. They sell.
They get that at various different bars. So again, it is kind of dispersed, which is precisely what Matthew's saying. It's dispersed and so on. Absolutely right on.
But you're right. Non-vertical is one of the best aspects to allow for more economic diversification. Just like not putting the pharmacies, pharmacies are selling enough products, right? So allow the medical cannabis dispensaries to either have a pharmacist or somebody trained well enough to dispense and let all the products be sold from a medical cannabis dispensary. Otherwise, you're putting more business into the pharmacies and
or even disallow pharmacies from selling CBD products. But again, that's I guess going to limit your reach of the CBD products and so on.
No, but that's what I mean. I mean it should be allowed at some level. I mean, look at Barbados and these things, right? They and Trinidad. They still confused as much as they've gotten the right advice already. They're still confused as to what to do with cannabis flower. Barbados wasn't going to allow it in the first place, right? And then after some talks
Are
again,
you serious?
realized, oh, this is the mainstay of the money in the industry.
That's funny. I remember when your AG, I think, was announcing that they were going to pass the legislation, and there was the whole furor over whether it should be male or female plants, and that because he said it could only be male plants initially, and people were like, what the fuck? Who's talking? Who are you talking to, man? I was like,
Well. First of all, I was the official consultant, and people called me from all over the world when he made that announcement and said,
what is going on
aren't you
here?
the advisor
Who's
to the
talking
government
these
of Trinidad?
people, man? I'm like, my
Yes.
goodness
So
gracious.
did you tell the government? I can't believe it. No, but he doesn't listen.
Hilarious.
He only listens to who he wants to listen to, and as much.
Well, don't they all do? In some of their defense, there's got to be a lot of voices coming at you all the damn time. You got to siphon out and listen to one.
Yeah, but how wrong you will be?
I mean, one of the other things I was talking about too that I think would help the small farmer is the EU GMP normalization relations, right? Have you folks heard any strives for that, right? Where a Jamaican person can be certified and come and inspect my lab or my grow field.
It has to be. It will be, apparently. I've looked into it. It will be Europeans that have to come in to do the inspection.
Yeah, no, we're heads deep in the process right now, which is costing us a pretty penny as well.
I agree with you. It should be that, right? They should work with train the people in the local GMP
jurisdictions, definitely. Yeah.
I don't understand why they're not looking at this from this. I mean, this should be applied to all other consumable goods so that we can export other consumable goods to Europe, right? Because right now our markets are more limited to North America and South America. So you're absolutely right, Matthew. That's something that needs to be looked at, the trading of and they can still get their money. Just let the local people so it'll happen faster, right?
Yes, it happens faster. Exactly.
I don't know if you're aware, but there's a new one to meet. Since you say you're in process for Euro GMP, you know that now you also have to get your EU novel. If it's CBD you're dealing with, you have to now get Euro. Okay, well, right. But anybody with CBD also has to get their novel food.
I saw that recently. Yes,
right, and that's another level of inspection by another body, right? That has been added to the list now for those that
they know how to pass money around to the people, man.
I would say this though, like going through the process, right, of the EU GMP, what they're really concerned about is more the post-harvest activities, right, and how the cannabis has been dealt with after it has been taken out of the ground.
Yes,
right.
But
sure, you need to grow up to a certain standard, but it's the post-harvest activities that where we've had to make the biggest investments. And where they're really looking at what it is that we're doing with the cannabis, whether we're irradiating it, how we're eliminating mold, how we're preventing mold. So I mean, it's stuff like
in your processing facility, you mean?
Not even processing, because we're exposing what they call inflorescence or dried flower, right? If we were going to be processing and squeezing down, it's a whole nother level.
Yeah. Right? No, processing meaning your drying rooms and your curing rooms. That's what you mean.
Curing room, exactly. Yeah.
But one thing you have to know that I'm aware of, that I'm not sure if you're aware of yet. I'm not sure if all the importers are looking at it, but I do know it is a requirement of the European Union also. Once it's plant material and it's medicinal, it must have been grown under GACP conditions, right?
Yes.
Because it's not that difficult, but it has to be done. Also, it has to utilize HACCP conditions, right? Hazards analysis, critical control points, right?
Absolutely.
Points within that system that is often overlooked is the tracking and monitoring availability, so that you can have batch numbers, so that you can effect recall and withdrawal of products if necessary.
Absolutely, yeah. And you need to be documenting all the corrective actions that you've taken, where you've destroyed it, how it's been destroyed,
Omari,
what you put into them, all that stuff.
You're listening to Matthew there, Omari? As to why and how the small farmers shouldn't get, but you listening to the cost involved after you get the license of what you need to do to become an exporter, which everybody in Jamaica and all the poor farmers wants to be. This is why letting a poor farmer.
And then there's one more level as well in terms of breaking into the European or the Middle East market. Don't think that you're going to be getting on the phone and calling important saying, hey, listen, I have weed from Jamaica, you want to talk. It doesn't really work like that.
Yeah, I realize that. I know that.
It doesn't.
You need to have a consultant or a seller on the other side of the world who's also taking a cut and wants a retainer to go represent you in the marketplace for future sales.
We see has happened a lot is that, especially out of the United States, that people will have, oh, we got a little dispensary, we got an operation. Yeah, and as soon as they tell you, Bridget, send your Jamaican, we just send it. So people are thinking, really, literally believe that it's the Jamaican government that's preventing them from exporting it. They do not know this information. You know, it's not out there. This is very true. I've tried to say this to many people.
Because America doesn't export, you know, they're not
this is the Jamaican government. It's not their responsibility. It's the media, really. So I guess this is why we're here. But yeah, there is that complete fallacy, because a lot of people do have, look, man, this guy says he buy X amount, we just can't send it to him, and that's I don't know how to get that myself.
But look, it's not the government setting them up, all right? Let me correct that. Many of the governments,
that's the belief. That is,
especially, simply do not know that these provisions are in place within the international treaties and are part of the country's international treaty obligations, right? Again, this is why I get my job, right? Because simply didn't understand the treaty obligation. So all of them, every country I've talked to, even Jamaica, says
it's not in your purview. You have to give a damn about it.
From the onset, their goal is to export cannabis. They believe that even in the Caribbean, right, they can export a cannabis at a reasonable price, which to me is unfeasible. Again, when the larger countries like Colombia and stuff come online, there's no competition, no way we could compete.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Trinidad, if we keep our lowest electricity rate in the Western Hemisphere, which
you got something.
But if we kept that, indoor cannabis can be produced cheaper here than it can be produced in parts of the world, right? Even America, even Canada, right? So, but the government is now talking about bringing our electricity rates to international standards. So,
sorry,
6 cents US per kilowatt hour, which is what we pay now, very cheap, to 30 cents and more, which is ridiculous.
I was talking to Matthew about that as well. In Jamaica is very interesting because we have, of course, there's the outdoor thing, but then you have the JPC. You have your lack of control over the grow. You have your greenhouse, which to me makes a lot of sense. Your indoor in Jamaica is going to be exponentially expensive because of the cost of electricity. That's just huge. That's an interesting advantage you have there in Jamaica. Trinidad.
Yeah, you can't do indoor in Jamaica and make any money. The cost of electricity is way too high.
Exactly. Barbados, same thing. I mean, now you can offset, but it's going to cost a lot for us to offset a 5,000 square foot canopy, quarter of an acre, right, in canopy. To offset the cost of electricity completely in Barbados, we have to put down $1 million solar plant.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Yeah, we're using
that's like 400,000 US a year.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and that's for 5,000 square foot of cultivation. That's all.
Yeah. It's infeasible.
We have supplemental lighting, or plan on using supplemental lighting in our hoop houses, or because I like that greenhouses, and we're relying heavily on solar for that. Heavily on solar.
Yeah. Well, it works. I mean, if you do your proper, as you say, seal greenhouses, like their greenhouses, whatnot, you should get a very, very, very good product outdoor. Most of the issues outdoor in terms of trichome production, in my opinion, comes from weather, rain,
absolutely.
Rain,
wind, this and that.
And denaturing its growth, basically. So I've seen fabulous greenhouse grown cannabis in California that you wouldn't be able to tell whether it's indoor or greenhouse if you do it. You know, so and that is approvable by GACP. That will meet the HACCP standards when tracking and you monitor your systems, and you will be available to export once you meet your Euro GMP and so forth. So Matthew is on the right track. I'm actually very, very, very interested to meet you, Matthew. As first
yeah, me too, man. Me too. So am I.
All right, great. And exactly time. It's time that we start to wrap this up. Thank you very much for this very engaging conversation. We touched on quite a few topics. We did address the issue of the small farmers, as I guess a lot of people are saying. It really comes down to education and information, and people do have to start to learn to come together. You know, great information from both you, Matthew and Marcus. 2M as well, and I'm M as well. What 3 M's in one day? That's interesting. All right, cool. Great. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody watching or, well, we are streaming live. Please join us. We have another session coming up in about 40 minutes, I believe. And we have some other stuff for the rest of the day. Again, thank you guys for joining me very, very much. And we will be in touch. Let's get you the conversation off screen as well. Please. All right. Well, no, thanks a lot, guys. Bless. Well, no,
Thanks
Thanks,
again.
take care.
All right, man. Bye-bye.